On the Bionicle Inspiration series, I like to spotlight Bionicle MOCs from across the land to inspire you, so that you can learn the power that's inside you and get inspired to build some awesome stuff. And that's exactly what we're going to be doing today. We're going to be talking about Pokemon MOCs on this episode of the show. And thankfully, there's a lot of really nice ones that we're going to be talking about today. The first one we've got is by Mike Neves, and this is Red Gyarados. In case you're not super familiar with Pokemon, but you still want to be seeing all these awesome creations, here is the actual Pokemon Gyarados. Typically it's blue, but you can have the shiny variants of Pokemon, and shiny Gyarados is red. So this is based off some of the early loading screens that you could see in Pokemon Go back in the earlier days of Pokemon Go. Today, a lot of these screens are very different. They change all the time. But I think regardless, most of these have always been really nice artworks, really nice just drawings, pictures, whatever you want to call them. So it's nice to see this being inspired by that. But I think this can go a little bit deeper as well. Look to other video game artwork or even concept art and things for inspiration, because like we see with this build, it can inform a lot of really cool stuff. And there's also a lot of it as well, which is helpful. I mean, some of the stuff you can get out of that kind of artwork is unique color schemes, or even kind of getting a bit of an insight into how the artist designed those characters, and then how you could maybe implement that in your own MOCs. But also sometimes it's just cool character designs, and that can be a nice stepping on point for you, because you could look at some of the cool art and go, oh, can I maybe recreate that in Lego? And sometimes, depending on the artwork, you can even just start to see Lego pieces forming, you know, the way a jacket looks or something. Oh, that kind of looks very similar to this piece. And it can be enough to kind of kickstart your creative juices and get you building. So it's something to definitely consider. And this is a nice example of that in practice, you know. So something that is very obvious with this MOC is that it is very system heavy. There's almost no construction pieces on this. And I think that's kind of wise, because I don't know how easy this would be to recreate with Bionicle pieces. I say that, Mike Neves has actually built one himself with mainly Bionicle pieces. You have to check the links in the description to check that out yourself, and he did a very good job with it. But I think it's better captured with system. I mean, areas like the mouth with the teeth and the tongue with some of those pink areas there, those red whiskers that he's got going on, the big dark red horns at the top of his head, or even things like the eyes as well, which are a lot more tiny. Those would be pretty difficult to accomplish with Bionicle pieces. And I'll talk more about this throughout the episode, because we're going to look at a few more system MOCs in this video. But it is worth noting there how much system is used, and how much it is, I think personally, improving this MOC. It just lets you be so much more accurate to the source material and really effectively recreate it, because this looks just like the real thing. The real thing, obviously Pokemon's not real, you know what I mean. But something that is also nice is this segmented chest belly design that's going on here. It's using some of these panel pieces here, specifically the corner ones, to achieve what's a really awesome design. And the fact that those panels allow you to sort of butt the two up against each other is smart, because it eliminates some of those unsightly gaps between the different segments, and it makes it seem much more like this seamless transition between all of the different segments there. And it helps it look more accurate to the source material. Plus, it's just a really cool design, really cool technique. And yes, it's a shiny Pokemon. That's fun too. If you want to build your own Pokemon, definitely take a look at their shiny colors and see, hey, maybe I've got those pieces, they're a bit easy to play with, or maybe the colors look way cooler and that'll just be better to build for you. But either way, playing with the shiny colors or the original ones is a fun thing to look into, so definitely consider that if you're planning to build some Pokemon. On to the next MOC. This is by Zane Houston, and this is Mecca Charizard. So I think it's important to take inspiration from Pokemon, because there's just so many epic designs out there, and there's over 1,000 Pokemon now, so there's a lot that you can look at and hopefully get some inspiration from. And, you know, seeing a MOC like this is, I think, again, a nice example of how you can do that. This is essentially just basically a one-to-one copy of Charizard. A few things have been changed, but it looks so similar to the original. And, you know, yes, the color scheme has changed too, because this is more of a robotic version, but it actually, again, ironically, it looks pretty similar to the shiny colors of Charizard, which it is a bit more black for Charizard, but you can kind of get away with some gray, I suppose. But still, the fact that this is essentially just Charizard, but the tail has been changed and the belly has been changed, so you can see more greebles and other mechanical details inside, so that this can be a Mecca Charizard, is smart. It's clever. Maybe you want to look at a Pokemon like Hydreigon, for example, and you're going to say, hey, the three-headed dragon idea, love it. Let me take that and put that into my MOC. I don't even need to remotely have it look anything like that Pokemon, but I like that concept and I'm going to run with it. or you very heavily inspire it off of that Pokemon, but you change a couple things. You switch out the colors, and it's not intended to be built as that Pokemon, but you're just getting a little bit of inspiration from it. Nothing wrong with doing something like that. And this is a great example of that too. I love the wing design on this. Now, we can see in this back photo here how that has specifically been done. It's using some of the sails from the Queen Anne's Revenge, which was a Pirates of the Caribbean set. These are not cheap sail pieces, unfortunately. I imagine the guy bought a bunch of that set when it came out, or bricklinked it when it was much cheaper. Unfortunately, they're not so cheap now. But it makes for a fantastic wing design, that's for sure. Especially because the printed bits are on the back, so you can't quite see them from the front. So that way you can kind of get away with not seeing that there, because it doesn't quite work, does it? The flamethrower tail is also clever. I like how it has been put in more of a mecha context, so you can see the orange barrel there and stuff, and it's mimicking how a flame comes off of some type of flamethrower of sorts. So that's a clever way of adapting the source material. Also, the head design's great, looks very accurate, but there's another nice neck segment here, which seems to be very similar to what we saw before, but still different. It's hard to tell exactly how that has been built, but it looks to be using some sort of ball and socket piece. Probably some of the Exoforce ball and socket pieces that oh, actually, no, it's using clips. Helps if I look at the back photo here, doesn't it? It's using clips, and it's using the T-pneumatic tube pieces there so that it can have a bit of posability to it. But again, this is just the same segment repeated in a couple different times here, and it appears to also slightly be little tiny modifications based on where it is in the design, so that it transitions into the other body parts with a bit more ease. So nice to see another take on a good segmented design there. This is a beautiful Charizard mech. Up next, Peter Shaker has built Talonflame, and I love this. I've always loved Talonflame as a Pokemon. They just look awesome. And this is a great recreation of it. It's using some of these Fire Fang plastic elements that came on this Cobra-like Ninjago set, but the patterns on them definitely have that scorched, fiery look to them, so they're a perfect inclusion on this Talonflame mock here. And seeing all the different poses that this Talonflame mock can do is also really cool. There's so much life to it, and if you have built a mock that is super posable, photograph it in all the different poses that it can get into. And I know sometimes when I'm photographing stuff, I go, oh, I can't think of any poses right now. Just Google like different poses or like art references and stuff like that. And just try and copy the pictures. Even if you do something like Spider-Man poses or something like that, you can get it. Not that Talonflame would be in Spider-Man poses. I guess you could just Google bird poses or bird action shots or something crazy like that, and then you'd be able to replicate some of those so that you can fully show off some of the awesome posability qualities of your mock, because a good posable mock is impressive on its own. The head design on this is great, using some of those hollow studs there so that there is that pupil to the eye design. That's very nice. Simple, but effective. I also love the tail here, using some of these kind of flag-like pieces. They're a bit longer. I don't know if that's specifically what they've called there. I always sort those with my other flag pieces in my LEGO collection, so I kind of just group them within that category, but I don't know if that's what Bricklink specifically calls them. But what's cool about this design too is just putting the little one-by-one pieces there, and then it transitions into a sticker as well. So always nice to play with your stickers and continue patterns in that sense if you can. It's a clever way of doing that, and again, it mimics the source material in a very fun way. Otherwise, this is just a great recreation of a really, really cool Pokemon. Love your work. And now we can see how Brick Dinosaurs has built Groudon. I remember loving Groudon so much as a little kid. He's still awesome, but there was a time where he was my favorite Pokemon. Now it's Garchomp, if you're curious. I love Groudon. Anyway, this is a lot more of a blocky design, and I think that works for Groudon. I mean, when we look at the hands and the feet and the legs and the belly, they're kind of just big old chunks. But he's a chunky boy, so you can get away with that. And again, I think this is a nice pro for using system pieces more so than Bionicle pieces, because a lot of your Bionicle pieces are a little bit more smooth and organic, whereas system can be a lot more blocky for obvious reasons. So using system here I think works, because Groudon to a degree is a little bit chunky and blocky. It's a bit hard to see in these images, but I do like the eye design, how it's just poking through underneath the red armor on top there, which, again, accurate to the source material. It appears that eye design is a yellow 1x1 quarter tile, one of the dots pieces there. And then I think just next to that is a black 1x1 round tile. And I think that's one of the printed ones that has a little white dot on it that is, an eye in that sense. And I mean, there's so many different printed eye tiles. I have heaps of them and don't even know what to do with half of them. So it's nice to see that in action here, making a very nice eye design. And it's nice too that a bit of it is cut in half, so it makes it look a little bit more sinister. It's like a furrowed eyebrow over the top of an eye to give it a more imposing look. It's cool. When we take a look at the back, we can see some of these Exoforce ratchet joints, which were very common on the Exoforce sets, which was such a lovely theme with some great pieces to it. But I don't know, seeing those has reminded me of just how great a lot of the designs for Exoforce were. And you can see a lot of them in modern mechs like Ninjago or some of their like dragons and different things like that. They don't specifically use those ratchet joints, but they'll use other ball and socket connections or mixel joints and things like that. And I think it's worthwhile taking a look at some of those sets, seeing how the LEGO designers have built them, how they've used different ratchet or ball and socket connections and things, or how they've transitioned from an upper body to a lower body, or how they've attached the limbs, whatever. Seeing how they did that, because LEGO designers are really smart and they make some fantastic designs. And, you know, if you have ready access to those instructions, I mean, they're free on lego.com. You could just read the instructions for free and not even have to buy the set to see how it's done. You might learn a thing or two about attaching limbs or playing with system pieces to achieve unique organic designs like this. I think it's just a wise thing to do. So it's nice to see that those pieces have been used, and you might be able to gain a bit of extra knowledge if you look into how LEGO designers have used them too. Also, while we're looking at the back, we can see another segmented design. It's been a surprising theme within this episode, which is cool. But it's nice to note that if you look just towards sort of the middle of the back, we can just see a few little ratchet joints poking out there. So it appears that those are used to achieve the curved effect here. And I imagine each of these individual segments would end with one of those ratchet joints. They're just connected together, and then it helps create a bit of that kind of curvature to this MOC. And the individual segments appear to just be all fairly different, but still following very similar principles, so that there is a bit of unity between all of the different segments. So when you put it together, it seems like a nice seamless transition. What's interesting about this, though, is on the previous designs, I was talking about how you bridge the gaps between the different segments so that it doesn't look too obviously Lego, and it helps it seem more organic and flowing. But here it actually works. Some of those gaps just mimic the black lines that you would see on Groudon's back within the source material. So it's a nice way of taking advantage of that to include accuracy to the source material. Love how that looks. But yeah, this is a fantastic recreation of Groudon in Lego pieces. Let's look now at a fantastic MOC. This one is once again by Mike Neves, but this is Sizzle this time. Now, I specifically included this because Mike Neves has a whole bunch of fantastic Bionicle-focused Pokemon designs. Check the links in the description. You can see more of his awesome Bionicle Pokemon work if you're interested in it. But I wanted to specifically show a Bionicle Pokemon here because we've been talking so much about system, and this is the Bionicle Inspiration series. But let's be honest, Construction, which is really what this show should be called, the Construction Inspiration series. Construction nowadays is very, very system heavy, so I think you can kind of sort of get away with it. But let's take a look at some Bionicle Pokemon to see how we can use our Bionicle pieces and put them to good use. Immediately, something I love is not technically a Bionicle piece, it's kind of a Construction piece though, is the inclusion of these dinosaur tail pieces on the feet leg area here, and that perfectly mimics the wonderful curvature of Sizzle's legs there, and then ends off with one of those Borok eyes there to once again mimic the source material. Love how that looks. Such a simple, effective, and surprisingly not too part-hungry design. It's a very minimalistic design, but it gets the job done. I love seeing these Vakama masks used as the pincer kind of blade things on Sizzle's hands there. It's also nice to see it paired with those Nuva shoulder pieces in dark red, which we can also see on the head and the torso. So nice to see some consistency all throughout the MOC, repeating pieces there. It just works. And the textures of those Nuva shoulders perfectly mimic the top of Vakama mask's head, the top of Vakama's head, but I guess it's the mask, however you want to word that. So it's nice to see pieces being paired in that sense because the textures are similar. We can also see the same thing with those Rakshi head pieces, which are being used on the upper legs and the upper arms, kind of the shoulder area as well. And all of those different pieces in conjunction there work so well at recreating the armored bug-like look of Sizzle. So cool. But we do still see even more system being used on the wings here. So we can't quite get away from system, but that's okay. System's cool. It's our friend. So I adore how that looks, and just in general, the way that this mock appears to be able to pose with brilliant ease, and the wonderful, almost like S curvature of it and everything. It's so organic and smooth, and just so accurate to the source material. And this was posted in 2012. I think it's so impressive how Mike Neves is building stuff this crazy and this cool all those years ago. It's weird saying 2012 was, gosh, that's 11 years ago. Wow. Yeah, he was doing stuff that I think was pioneering Bionicle building and inspiring people all the way back then. That dude has inspired so many people. He's such a good builder. This is such an impressive Sizzle mock. Love it. So that's it for a whole bunch of Pokemon inspiration today. Hopefully I've given you a few ideas for some Pokemon related mocks, or if you want to just take a look at the world of Pokemon and let it influence a few ideas for not specifically related Pokemon mocks, that's okay too. Check the links in the description to see more from these builders. They've all done a lot of other fantastic stuff, so you gotta check it out. Additionally, there's links in the description to my own social media, so you can take a look at some of the stuff that I've got going on. I might be posting over there, as well as some bonus content on my Patreon. If that's something you're interested in seeing, check the links in the description. Otherwise, thank you. Oh, well, if you want to submit your own mocks, whether they're Pokemon related or not, you can do so through the submission email that's on your screen right now. Almost forgot. Otherwise, thank you very much for watching. Happy building, and bye for now.